So, I've had enough with Storm, Earth, and Fire. It's sent me into such frustration recently, I can't even. So, I was just messing around doing testing because I had this idea. It occurred to me that Momentum Boost, this talent that increases Fist of Fury's damage for every tick that you do, I was like, I wonder if Storm, Earth, and Fire is benefiting from that properly. And I was thinking this because your clones channel Fist of Fury faster than you, so I was wondering, do they sort of like fall behind on damage because your ticks come first, and your ticks are the only ones that buff the damage. While I was doing that, I came across a different bug. So during testing, I unequipped all my gear, spec'd out of anything that could cause any sort of mid-pull variations in damage, and I got to testing. And this is what I found. So in this clip here, I'm basically testing to see Fist of Fury's tick damage. So I walk out and I sort of get into a position where my Fist of Fury is going to miss, but my clones will hit. I just want to see how much damage theirs does. So theirs is doing 11.1k. Now, I did testing and I can confirm that like your first Fist of Fury hit doesn't trigger and benefit from Momentum Boost. It's only the subsequent hits. So this hit isn't affected by Momentum Boost, and my first hit won't be either. So it's all the natural damage of Fist of Fury without any modifiers. So theirs is doing 11.1, 11.1, and again, and I go in, and it does 12k. And when I saw this the first time, I'm like, okay, maybe that first hit did Momentum Boost. But then I tested it by testing my first hit damage on 1 target versus 5. And if I hit 5 targets with it, it should buff it by 50%. There was no difference on 1 versus 5. So that damage there, the 11k clone ticks and the 12k from me, is the natural damage of your Fist of Fury without any trinket procs or anything like that. And then the next hit you'll see 12k from both of my clones, and then 13.2 from me. Well, 12.2 from them, 13.2 from me. So they're doing less damage. Now, I worked it out, they're doing approximately 7.31% less damage than you are during Storm, Earth, and Fire, which works out to be, instead of Storm, Earth, and Fire buffing your damage by 20%, it's more like 14. So our cooldown, at its base, at its core, is not as strong as it should be. So that's pretty tragic, right? That's, if a burst cooldown got buffed by 6%, like that's nothing to scoff at, like that's a noticeable buff. And here we are just, it's a problem, but it hasn't been noticed or fixed or whatever. Honestly, I'm probably gonna, if no one has picked up on this, I'm gonna chalk that down to there's just so much number clutter with Monk right now because of Storm, Earth, and Fire and then Gale Force and all that. It's just impossible to read details. But I've always been very analytical of Windwalker, and I've managed to find this now. So Fist of Fury is definitely doing less damage than intended, but what about other abilities? It's the same thing. I tested it. So every single ability, Windlord, Jade Wind, Sun Kick, Blackout Kick, Jade Lightning, everything except Slicing Winds, which is funny because Slicing Winds is buggy as hell anyway, but everything else that Storm, Earth, and Fire copies does 7.31% less damage than you when you have SEF active. So that's a pretty chunky damage loss. Now, at the end of this video, I've got a clip of me doing a full burst on 5 dummies. And you'll see how much damage we lose, not just from this, but from other bugs we're going to talk about too. Here I've got a little notepad document that sort of explains all this stuff. Now, I want to just go through this real quick. This is the Momentum Boost damage buff, and this is like the actual hits that I was getting with no gear on, with an heirloom weapon, with no enchant. So this 30k hit, the initial hit, this is with no Storm, Earth, and Fire, that's 30k. Then 10%, 33, 36, 39, 42. This is the important hit, right? Because that's a 20% modifier, which is the same as Storm, Earth, and Fire. Now, those hits, the same that we're getting in this clip here, the 11.1 hits there, it's the same as I've got noted down in this notepad doco. Now, the 12006 is how much I'm doing. So from this, we can already tell that it's not that I'm doing more damage than my clones, and the clones are doing the intended damage, it's I'm doing the intended damage. My clones are doing less. Because if we take this 12k hit and triple that, we've got 36,000, which is the same as a 20% buff from Momentum Boost's third hit on Fist of Fury. So if SEF was 20%, it would also be doing 36, but it's not. It's doing 34.2 in total, which is basically a 14% damage buff, like I said, instead of 20. So that's just fists. But this is the same on everything except slicing winds. So we've been losing damage for God knows how long. You know, the last time I did any sort of testing like this, I think was in BFA. And, you know, I don't often like take my gear off to do testing like this and like really dive into it. But man, like this sucks. Like I know Storm Within Fire sucks and I've hated it ever since it got changed in Legion. This is really damn annoying. This is the first major issue. At its core, Storm Within Fire is not giving you as much damage as it should be. Bad. Fix it. But there is definitely another problem, and this one you also can't do much about, and it's totally based on just luck, really. In this clip, I go to the cleave target dummies, and I use Fist of Fury with my clones out. And then I go and I calculate how many hits I did against my clones. So I go in, a Sunkick, Fist of Fury, let the full thing channel out, and then I go have a look at the details. So we go into the details. I did, that's my Fist of Fury there, 25 hits on 5 targets, 5 ticks of Fist of Fury is 25. Perfect, hit everything. And that's great, right? You can hit everything, and as the controller of your character, you can move and adjust, and if you miss or if you don't, it's on you, right? It's player error. You can improve on it if you make a mistake. Let's have a look at the Earth Spirit. 15 hits, all right? So he missed 2 targets out of 5. What about the Fire Spirit? 5. He missed 4 out of 5 targets. I went back and looked at the clip. He's standing here on the edge of this target dummy facing outwards. Now, I didn't fixate them in this clip, but even if you do fixate them, I've had the same problem. I did testing of this in Dragonflight on the AoE dummies inside that little like indoor area. Same problem. Consistently, I was hitting like 10 to 15 targets with my clones. It doesn't matter if you fixate them or not. It's luck dependent. It just depends on where they decide to go. So this is an extreme case of one target just, one clone just missing 4 out of 5 enemies. But this was literally, I went to the dummies, this was the first time I tested it on like this crash out that I'm having right now. It's the first time I tested it. I didn't like repeat it and try and farm for this. It was literally the first time. So then when we go look at the details again, the damage difference between my fists, 1.2 mil versus Earth Spirit 762 versus Fire Spirit 168. Okay? All of this together, you get like 2.1 mil. Add all of this together and you're getting 2.1 mil. I then have another clip of me using Fist of Fury without Storm Within Fire. And it did 2.87 million. You can see 25 hits, I've got the same amount of HP, same buff, same gear and all. 25 hits, 2.87 million. It did more damage when SEF wasn't active. Name another DPS cooldown that lowers your damage sometimes when you press it. SEF is just that broken, you can't even trust it to boost your damage. So if I went into a pack of mobs, just then I went to the target dummies, stationary by the way, and hit Fist of Fury, and did less damage with it than if I had just not popped it, imagine how many times that's happened to you in a dungeon without you even knowing about it. Because who's going through a dungeon, going through their details at the same time? I mean, I do, because I'm very skeptical of Storm Within Fire doing what it does, and if I go into a pack and feel like I missed damage, like on a Jade Lightning or something, I'll look at it and I'll say, yeah, my clone did half the damage I did with Jade Lightning because they missed, or they stopped channeling, or something like that. And I've got evidence of it. I've literally got evidence of it, and I will show you in just a second. So in this burst, I've prepped everything that I possibly can. So realistic burst of the dungeon, I've got 20 stacks of Jade Lightning, I've got my Flurry Strikes ready to go off the next Tiger Palm, and my Trinkets ready. Icewind, Storm Within Fire, Sun Kick, Windlord, Jade Lightning, Tiger Palm to proc Flurry Strikes, Slicing Winds, Full Fist of Fury, Sun Kick, Dragon Punch, Crane Kick, Tiger Palm again, and then just Crane Kick, Tiger Palm, Crane Kick, Tiger Palm, use my procs, and I'm done. Alright. Good burst, feels fine. Let's go and have a look at the details. So at first glance, I can see my Jade Lightning did 33 mil, that Slicing Winds hit pretty hard, blah blah blah. Let's have a look at the clone's damage. So mine, again, 33 mil Jade Lightning. The Fire Spirit did 14.8. That's less than half. You can clearly see 20 hits instead of 25, my Jade Lightning did 25. Right, so he missed the target. The Earth Spirit, same thing. But then look at the average damage. The average damage of my Jade Lightning is almost double. So not only did they miss a target, not only are they doing 7.31% less damage than I am at base level, there's another bug that makes them not do the appropriate damage. At first I was thinking maybe this is a sort of thing where my clones didn't benefit from like a trinket or something, but like looking at Crane Kick's damage and Fist of Fury's damage and all that, they're pretty even, right? My Crane Kick did 23, my Fist of Fury did 15, and I actually missed a dummy there, right? But again, it's my mistake that I can fix. But if you compare my fist damage and Crane Kick damage to theirs, relatively similar, within the realm of this can happen, right? But the Jade Lightning did so much less. The actual ticks of damage were doing so much less damage. So I don't think that was because like they didn't benefit from a trinket or something like that, because granted that trinket gives a lot of agility. But I do remember reading somewhere that if you use a trinket before Storm Within Fire, they don't immediately benefit from it. But in this clip, I literally trinket after Storm Within Fire, out of habit, because I know that that's a problem, so it shouldn't have happened. They channel the Fist of Fury fully, they just miss a target, but it hits like for half the damage. So yeah, not only are we missing the base damage at 7.3%, they're doing less, not only did they miss a target, and that's really out of your control, but then sometimes they just do way less. For what reason exactly? Now I've seen this in PvP. Now I'm not joking here, in PvP, I've gone like a sort of weird build, right? Totally focusing on like crit and Jade Lightnings. I have had more success doing Jade Lightning damage by using SEF to proc 2 sets of Flurry Strikes, and then cancelling SEF and doing Jade Lightning that way, because it will either just do less damage randomly, or they'll just not cast it, or they'll just stop channeling like halfway through. It happens so frequently, I've just stopped depending on them for doing damage with Jade Lightning. I just cancel it. Like, it's gotten to this point for me. Like, it's that annoying and that obscene that I've like actually just caved and decided to rant about it. So here is everything from that opener, right? So both of my clones did 67 million damage each, so 134 mil overall in one opener. If we do the math and divide their damage by 0.9269, which is correcting the initial value, because for instance, if I take a calculator here, and I go 1, what was that first value? 11128 divided by 0.9269, we get 12,005. And that number is either 12,005 or 6 anyway, that's totally correct. So If we take this value of what my clones actually did of 134 mil and do the same thing, you get this value. So I lost 10,567,000 damage because of that bug where clones just do less damage by like 7.31% or whatever. And my Jade Lightning, like I said, did 33 mil, but my clones did way less. Factoring all this in, that Jade Lightning, using mine as a reference, should have done 100 mil, but instead did 65. So if we combine the missing damage from the Sortified damage bug with the missing damage of Jade Lightning, the targets that they missed, and just the fact they did way less damage, not including the Fist of Fury ticks that were missed, Gale Burst, and any other quirks, you're looking at least 45.5 million damage missing from a 441 million damage opener. Factoring this stuff in, you're probably looking at 50, which is close to losing 10% damage in an opener. That's cooked. If this was any other class, it would be patched in an instant. But it's not. We're talking about Windwalker here. We get no attention. While making this video, I also happened to come across one of the reasons why Jade Lightning bugs out. So here's a clip from me doing a delve. And I pull this rare, a couple of ads come in, I Windlord, and then a Jade Lightning. Now watch the debuffs on the rare. They're still there, and then they're gone. Now, what actually happened was this target on the bottom left here died, and as soon as the target died, the clone stopped channeling. So that's what happens. But this doesn't explain why they stop channeling at the start of pulls in Mythic Plus where the mobs have heaps of HP, and also doesn't account for the fact that sometimes Storm with Fire just bugs out and they don't copy it anyway, which is a long running bug. So, even though this is a thing, and it is annoying, there's more to it than just this. Sometimes they stop channeling, sometimes they do half the damage. They're always doing less damage than they should be. And, you know, just to showcase it again, here's literally a clip from a minute later of the exact same thing happening. Windlord, and there it goes. Right, happens super quick. There's the Jade Lightning, and it's gone. As soon as that mob in the back dies, it's gone. And then the rest of this Jade Lightning is essentially not worth it. Because it did less, like, I guess it's still worth channeling, but like, you know what I mean? You lost so much damage because they just stopped channeling it. It could have still done good damage to these two mobs, but no. They're just done. They'd rather auto-attack their target for some reason. The main reason why SEF was even a thing in Legion, like, if you remember, back in like Legion Beta or Alpha, there was an iteration where we had Tiger Ebru on a 2-charge system, and then SEF was a side thing that you would use to tag mobs with Mark of the Crane. Then they consolidated them into one, and it's been the most buggy heap of garbage I've ever seen. But now Mark of the Crane doesn't exist. It's not a thing. You don't have to tab target. That whole, you know, functionality, if you can even call it that, is no longer needed. Why would you want your clones to run around and hit random stuff? Sometimes you got to cast a mob who's out in the middle of nowhere. If you're using AoE spells, goodbye to all of your AoE damage. You know, like an example of an awful thing of Storm and Fire. On Mugsy, I did Mythic Mugsy. There's an ad at the start of Mugsy that spawns that takes heaps less damage. So every time I would pull Mugsy, I'd conduit, I'd move out of range so I wouldn't hit that because conduit damage splits. But I can't move my clones. So my clones, on every conduit, on every pull on Mugsy, is doing less damage because my clones are just standing there. And there's nothing I can do to move them or improve it. Like, it's just, there's no reason to have it. The reasoning for it existing is gone. You could make a cosmetic glyph that replaced SEF with Serenity, didn't change the math at all, literally just it's a 20% damage buff. Same math as Storm Within Fire, but just without the whole convoluted thing of splitting you into 3. And you would legitimately get a huge damage buff out of it. In short, just get rid of SEF. Just bring back Serenity, just do literally anything, then split us into 3 and have us deal with Storm Within Fire. Just anything else at this point, please. Like, this is my main. I've played Windwalker for, like, how long? 704 days. With 704 days logged in on this character alone. I've not been pushed to this threshold before. Anyway, there's my rant. Hopefully something good happens. See yous.